I'm reading a letter from the governor dated May 22nd, 2024. It says, "Dear councilors, I am pleased to nominate Jessica M. Dubin to the position of Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Sincerely, Maura T. Healy." Now, I'm going to start by introducing the councils that are currently present. Council Eileen Duff, Council Tara Jacobs, Council Marilyn Petito Devaney, and Council Ferrara. Councilor Iannello was here earlier. He had to leave, but he did want to express that he was in support of your nomination. He had something important he had to do today. And Councilor DePaulo's floating around here somewhere. When he comes back in the room, we'll certainly introduce him. We're going to start with you introducing your family and friends. If you can remember everybody that's named who's here, it's a lot of people.
I did bring a lot of people. I have my daughter, Rachel, there, my good friend and the assistant clerk at the Stoughton District Court, Monica Collins, my mom, Lee Dubin, my son, Ben Reardon,
Good.
my father, Dick Dubin, my good friend and former colleague and now Judge Nan Sauer of the Probate and Family Court, my partner, Lindsay Mason, my partner, Holly Hinty, my husband, Brian Reardon, assistant, Amanda Thompson, my partner, David Lee, and my partner, Bob Rivers. And I'm also very happy that Chief Justice Casey is here.
Now, I understand we're taking one witness out of order.
Yes.
Who said she'd be available at what time?
Around 11:30.
Okay, well, it'll be a little tight, but that's Ambassador Claire Cronin that we'll be calling out of us. She'll be zooming in from Ireland. And we all want to be treated nice when we go there, so we might have to sit here a few minutes and wait for her. So we're going to call your first witness, which is Miss Amanda M. Thompson, your legal assistant.
Hey, that's a good start.
2 minutes and 55 seconds, she said.
Good morning, members of the Governor's Council. It is an honor to be here to speak from my wonderful experience, both professional and personal, on behalf of Jessica Dubin. I joined Lee and Rivers back in 2016 after making a big move from Buffalo, New York to the Boston area. For my first day at Lee and Rivers, Jess went out of her way to make sure I felt welcome and was comfortable in my new position. She was always extremely patient and generous with her time to make sure I had a firm understanding of any questions that came to her way. After a few years of working at Lee and Rivers, I had the tremendous opportunity to become Jess's legal assistant. Working directly with Jess has given me the chance to witness her extensive knowledge of the law and legal process firsthand. With any client or case, Jess is incredibly respectful, compassionate, and professional. Using her calm demeanor and excellent interpersonal skills, she is able to make what can be a very uncomfortable process for clients easier to navigate and less intimidating to understand. Through her zealous advocacy, she makes those she represents feel incredibly confident and prepared. Through her busy and demanding caseload, Jess always takes the time to create a sense of camaraderie throughout our office. From conferring with other partners and associate attorneys to guiding our file clerks, many whom are young college or law students, she commits her time and knowledge to assisting anyone and everyone who reaches out to her. Jess also treats everyone around her with the utmost dignity and respect, including myself. She consistently checks in with me to make sure I'm not overwhelmed with my workload and uses mistakes or errors in my work as learning opportunities to help me gain knowledge and succeed in my position alongside her. On top of our professional relationship, I have also been able to develop a personal relationship with Jess. As a member of the LGBTQ+ community, for me, entering a new work environment can be a difficult path to navigate. From the beginning of our relationship, I knew I had a safe space and ally in Jess. She always makes me feel incredibly comfortable with being my true authentic self and has been one of my biggest supporters of my relationship with my partner. She's been there to witness the beginning of our relationship to our engagements and always makes sure to stay up to date with our wedding planning. On the other side of our personal relationship, I continue to witness Jess's dedication and commitment to supporting her wonderful children and family. She is actively involved in her children's school sports and community organizations. It is always wonderful to see how proud Jess is of her family, and it is incredibly heartwarming to see her being their biggest fan. For all the reasons I have expressed and more, I believe Jessica Dubin is an outstanding candidate for this nomination. I give her thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak on her behalf, and I thank you all for your time today.
I'm going to ask you one question that might affect my vote. Those are Patriots.
Oh, no.
Bill's in.
Still,
That's all right. I like Josh, yeah.
Speak
Does anybody else have any?
Did you ever go to Duff's Bar?
all the time.
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate it. All right, next, we have very prominent probate lawyer, David Lee.
No questions, sir?
That, when I say very prominent, that means you and I get old over the years.
Thank you, that's right. Okay, good morning, everybody. I am so thrilled to be here and have the opportunity to share some of my views about Jess with you all. I've been fortunate to have Jess work with me and with our firm for 20 years, since May of 2004. I'm sure that you've received many letters already talking about Jess in superlatives, so I'm not going to add to them. I'm just going to endorse them, not even seeing exactly what they say. But I want to unequivocally indicate to you my endorsement of her for the position of family court judge. Having practiced before the family court for over 50 years now myself, I want to specifically direct my comments towards characteristics of Jess that I think translate so well into her being a judge of the Probate and Family Court. First of all, demeanor. As a highlight of working with Jess, she's been a moral compass within the firm and in advising her clients. She is sensitive and compassionate in her dealings with the feelings of both sides to litigation in which she's involved, which can be very difficult when dealing with highly emotional family law matters. Her dealings with opposing counsel and parties, often under trying circumstances, has always been respectful and professional. No client or opposing counsel has ever had a complaint about dealing with Jess Dubin. The valuable trait of Jess's is that she's punctual and prepared for whatever it is with which she's involved. I can't say that I am always as punctual as Jess insists upon me being punctual. She is right on time. Importantly, she knows what she knows, and she knows what she doesn't know. And she knows how to find out and learn about what it is that she needs to know in order to address a particular issue. She thinks through issues without any rigid judgment or preconceived notions, and is receptive to reasonably legally sustainable positions and supportable positions. And she has a wealth of experience covering the expanse of the field of family law. On another note, she's initiated our firm's involvement and her own direct involvement in providing pro bono services to adults as well as children. Beyond her responsibilities within our firm in representing clients, she had the initiative to be involved in bar associations and take on important positions and responsibilities within those organizations. She is a pleasure to be with and interacts well with all levels of personnel in the firm. And all of this while being committed to her community and her personal responsibilities, and unquestionably being committed to the love and unwavering support of her family. If confirmed, I'm certain that she'll be a great judge and serve the people of the Commonwealth well. I appreciate favorable consideration being given to Jess by this august council.
Thank you, David. You obviously, I joke, but you've been around a long time and been very well known in this area of the law, very well respected. Appreciate your testimony. Does anybody have any quick? Go ahead, Councilor.
Comment. You said something in your testimony that I think is so very important that I've literally in 12 years don't think I've ever heard anyone say. She knows what she knows and she knows what she doesn't know. And I think that's incredibly powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
That's a very important trait, Jess. That's
Very important trait for anyone, any of us, and anyone who's an attorney.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, before we hear from the opposition, there was a line out the door, so we got to give them time to get in. But before we hear from them, is there anybody in opposition before we continue? Okay, so I want to just, if I read all of these letters we got, you'd be retired. So I'm just gonna run through them. They're gonna be made part of the record, but I'm just gonna run through, who sent letters in. We got from Leon Rivers, Mary Gibson wrote a very, nice letter on your behalf. Well, I'm sure all of us have read through them. I've read through them. I've been getting emails to them, clogging up my email. But, we got a letter from Anthony Doninger, am I saying his name right? Yeah, who sent a very nice letter. We got one from Deborah Squires-Lee, Judge Deborah Squires-Lee, who I was in front of yesterday, who I don't mind saying turned out to be a really terrific Superior Court judge. She's when you talk about demeanor, she's somebody who absolutely has it and really does a great job. So sitting over at Suffolk Superior Court right now. I do want to acknowledge Chief Justice Casey, who's here. Is he still there? Right here, okay. Stephen Gurdon of Fitch Law Group, Law Partners. As I said, just reading the names taking a long time. Phyllis Federico from Warner Federico and Ryan, LLP. Kim Ledoux, who's a judicial case manager at the Norfolk Probate and Family Court. Doing the real work. No disrespect, Judge. A letter from Meredith Rosenthal of Friedman and Atherton. Another letter from Fitch Law Group, Andrea Sweet, Perinaire Sweet. Apologize, is that right? A letter from Rachel Biscardi from Northeast Legal Aid. We got an email letter from Judge Susan Ritchie, retired Justice Judge. We got a letter from Nancy Stone, a court reporter, another person doing the real work. An email from Leslie Goldsmith, a judicial case manager in Bristol. We got a letter from a long letter from Norman Jacobs, Ed Steele, Barrett, Jacobs, and Mullen. And we've had some of those folks in here testifying quite a bit over the years. We got a letter from Gerard Spinelli of Rubin and Rudman. We got a letter from Monica Collins, who, I'm not sure where she's from. I guess it's a personal reference. A letter from Jennifer Allen, Associate Justice of the Probate Court. I remember her hearing about 13 years ago, maybe that long, right around there. Little short, yeah. I don't know. But and then we got a letter from Judge James Menno, retired, and a letter from Kara Sertorsky of Leon Rivers. A letter from Eileen Flaherty, private practitioner. A letter from Judge Christine Anthony from the Administrative Office of the Probate Court. A letter from Krishna Bhutani. We got a letter from Judge Sora, who's here. I wanted to acknowledge her as well. There she is, yeah, okay. Robin Deutsch. And we got a letter finally from James Brick, from Brick, Jones, McBrien, and Hickey. And some of them were favorable. It's a lot. We don't often see that many. And it really says a lot, and I'm not going to read through them, we'll be here till forever, but they're part of the record, everybody has copies, and they're available if anybody wants to read them, certainly. Okay, now, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Before I begin my remarks, I'd like to thank Governor Healy for putting her faith in me and nominating me to be an Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court. I'd also like to thank Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, Chief Legal Counsel Scott Reed, Deputy Legal Counsel Kesselheim, Administrative Secretary McCarthy and her staff, and the members of the Judicial Nominating Commission. I'd like to thank my witnesses who have testified today. Thank you so much for all those kind words. And my family and colleagues who have, and friends who have been so encouraging throughout this process. A special thank you to Councilor Kennedy for chairing this hearing. He's been guiding me through this process, even though I'm not from his district. I appreciate that. I've enjoyed speaking with most of you honorable counselors in advance of this hearing and have a great appreciation for the time and effort you expend on vetting judicial nominees on behalf of your constituents. My final thank you is to Chief Justice Casey, who's been so encouraging throughout the way in this process. I'm incredibly grateful for all of your support throughout this. I wanted to start by talking a bit about my background. I grew up on Cape Cod with wonderful parents and a younger brother, Eli. My father, who was and still is a residential real estate lawyer, taught me the importance of hard work. He has almost never missed a day of work in his entire life. I wasn't even sure that he would take a day off to come here, but I'm glad that he decided to make an exception to his rule and to be here. He instilled in me a desire to excel in school and a love of debate. I was also able to observe my dad volunteer to be the chair of our town's planning board for many years and his support of local candidates by having meet and greets at our house. My mom was a homemaker who did an incredible amount of volunteering in our community. When I was younger, she frequently came into my school to teach us students what recycling meant when recycling was a brand new thing. She also volunteered with the Wildlife Rescue Organization to rescue hurt animals. She then turned her attention to trapping feral cats to spay and neuter them and finding homes for the kittens who could be domesticated. And she eventually was feeding about 40 cats every day on Martha's Vineyard for about over a decade of her life. Watching my mom volunteer at my school and care for so many feral cats has taught me the importance of giving back to our community. She's also an extremely empathetic, kind, and reasonable person and instilled those traits in me from a very young age. They are the traits that I have relied upon in every case to help me best understand the difficulties my clients are facing and to help me settle almost all of the probate and family court cases in which I have been involved. If I am fortunate enough to be an associate justice on the probate and family court, I know I will carry those traits with me to the bench. When I was 19 years old, I met my future husband, Brian Reardon, at a party on the Cape. Like my father, Brian was an extremely hard worker. He grew up in Dorchester and was the first of his family to attend college, and then he worked as an EMT for the city of Boston. We both started law school at the same time, with him working the night shift at EMS while attending law school in the evening, and me attending law school during the day. We got married during the summer after I graduated from law school, and we'll celebrate our 23rd wedding anniversary in 4 days. We had our son Ben in 2005 and our daughter Rachel in 2007. Ben just finished his freshman year at the University of Michigan, and Rachel is finishing today. It was supposed to be her last day of junior year of high school, but she chose to be here. Thank you, Rachel, for that. I'm truly grateful for my family's unwavering support throughout this process. My passion for the work that the Probate and Family Court does was kindled very early in my legal career. In 2004, I was lucky enough to be hired by the firm that was then known as Lee, Levine & Bowser, which is devoted to the practice of family law and enjoys a stellar reputation in the field. I've been at that firm since then and just had my 20th work anniversary last month. My mentors, David Lee, Bill Levine, and Bob Rivers, have taught me not only how to be an effective and ethical trial lawyer, but also how to settle even the most difficult of cases. They helped me realize that working in the probate and family court is an opportunity to help individuals and families who are often going through some of the most difficult times and experiences that life has to offer. In addition to the invaluable experience I have gained working for paying clients, I'm very lucky to have worked for a firm that has supported my desire to do a lot of pro bono work. Some of the most meaningful work that I've done as an attorney has been through the Women's Bar Foundation's Family Law Project, through which I've represented survivors of domestic violence. and have also mentored other attorneys throughout that project. I have volunteered directly to help the courts, serving as a conciliator to settle cases for different organizations, and serving as an ARC attorney, which stands for Attorney Representing Children, which means that I represent children at no cost, so their voices can be directly heard by our courts in contested custody cases. I have also volunteered throughout my career to be lawyer of the day in Norfolk, Suffolk, and Middlesex counties to help self-represented litigants who could not afford to hire a lawyer. I know that as an associate justice on the Probate and Family Court, I would be able to continue serving the court and help even more people who are going through very difficult and often painful experiences. In addition to my pro bono work, I have also had the privilege during my career to work on cases that have helped shape our family law case law in Massachusetts, including the Supreme Judicial Court's decision of Young versus Young, which transformed the law on alimony, and the appeals court case of Emery versus Sturdivant, which clarified when it is appropriate to attribute income to someone for alimony and child support purposes. Both of these cases provided much needed guidance about our area of alimony law. As an associate justice on the Probate and Family Court, I would use my understanding of our family law and probate statutes and cases to attempt to achieve the most fair and just results possible for people who step into the court. Ever since graduating from law school, I have hoped to become someday a judge. I recognize that I am privileged to have had a wonderful life from my childhood to my marriage, to my children, to my career, and I now want to give back and serve the public in one of the most meaningful ways that I can. If you confirm my nomination, I know I can make a difference and contribute meaningfully to the Probate and Family Court. I thank you all for your time today, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Mr. Jacobs.
It was really great sitting down with you, and I appreciate you coming out. We talked about a lot. I want to circle back on a couple things we did talk about, and give you a chance to address them here. One of the things that we talked about that you actually included in your application, but has also been an area of focus for members of my district's community who have had experiences with probate and family court, is around abusive litigation. You had quoted in your application that you have professional experience that with people making false allegations of abuse to try to get a leg up in their divorce cases, and believe I would be able to judge when that is occurring, which I think is already you're ahead, having even articulated that, highlighted that, and I want you to first articulate, just give more context to that, the experience you have and how you will bring that to bear to perceive in the courtroom when that might be happening, and then a remedy that you might apply, or how you would intervene in that instance to sort of minimize the impact of that form of abuse.
Sure. So I think we see it more and more in cases where one spouse, more often than not, the husband, but not always, is filing motion after motion after motion as a way, basically as a coercive control tactic to try to continue to control the person's spouse. And I think one of the most effective things that judges can do to stop that is to enter what's called a gatekeeping order, whereas someone is not allowed to file a motion unless the assistant judicial case manager has approved it, or reviewed it and approved it first, to make sure it's not just a waste of the court's time and it's not just an attempt to control an ex-spouse. So I think I would definitely be aware of that. I think more judges are becoming more aware of that is a tactic that some abusers use. So I've definitely seen that happen in my own cases and would be alert for that.
I appreciate that. I think that's an important understanding to have and to foster more awareness of it, and make use of something like what you're saying. You also had actually introduced the concept of your own implicit biases, and that in order to be a fair judge, one you should be aware of and make an effort towards working on improving one's own implicit biases. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk more about that, your perspective on that, how it will affect your your work as a judge and what inner work you have done or plan to do, or how you'll approach them.
Sure. So I think I recognize that we all have implicit biases. I like to think I'm as unbiased as can be, but I know that's not the case, that I, like everyone else, have biases. I'm going to need to be very aware of those and not let them come out at all in my decisions. I appreciated in our conversation that you suggested the Harvard implicit bias test that I can do online. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but I definitely want to do that. I didn't know those were so easily available, so I'm looking forward to doing that. What I've done so far, I think I've just, I've read articles about it, I've thought about it, but I haven't taken a test before, so I'm looking forward to doing that. I feel like where I'm gonna I really want to be a judge who is 100% fair between men and women. I think unfortunately we have some judges in our court who are just known as being a pro mom or a pro dad judge, and I do not want to be one of those judges. I want people to come before me, and they may not like my decisions, but they're not going to say, oh, it's a bad decision because I'm a man or because I'm a woman. I really want to be known as being as fair and gender neutral as possible.
No, I really appreciate that. I think gender bias is one area, there's racial biases in another where even socioeconomics or LGBTQ community members experiencing discrimination, disability. I honestly can't remember, did we talk about people who are impacted by TBIs and just executive functioning and accessibility in the courts? I don't recall if we had that conversation or not. It's an area that I also am interested in as an issue around access to justice, accommodations and otherwise, but just how much experience do you have with people who've either been impacted by a TBI or just born with some cognitive processing delay and helping to assist in ensuring that they're fully able to participate in the process and understand what's happening, and if they're delayed in processing, ensure that they're able to have that space to keep up with what's happening.
Yeah, so I have represented clients mostly through my pro bono work who have had traumatic brain injuries or have been developmentally disabled. So I do have that experience. I've attended a lot of trainings. I was one with the chief a couple months ago on domestic violence, where they were really emphasizing how someone who is abused can have PTSD symptoms that make it very difficult for them to testify in court. They don't remember things linearly, or they're just so scared that they can't give a nice coherent presentation that a judge may want to see. And I think I'll be very aware of that in cases where domestic violence is involved, that I can't expect a perfect witness to come give me a perfect story. And there may be gaps in memory or things that don't really make sense. And that's all part of the post-traumatic stress.
No, I appreciate that. I just have to say, between your resume, between the experience you have, the pro bono work you've done, the volunteer work you've done, the excessive volunteer work you've done, I think we talked about just how many hats and you wear, not just to participate, but to be an organizer for your events, your organization's events and dinners and other for your kids, on and on and on. It just articulates what kind of a person you are, how much you care, how much you give of yourself to your communities, and I appreciate that about you, and not just that you do it, but the specific things you've turned your attention to speak to who you are and what your priorities are. And so I just want to applaud you for all of that. I enjoyed meeting you, and you really I walked away really understanding who you are and being very much appreciative of it. So I don't have any further questions. I could ask you things all day, but I'll stop here and pass it.
Congratulations on surviving the hairpin turn. Also forever.
Thank you for applying. You got some great letters there. Big fan of yours, Judge O'Malley reached out to me a couple of times and thinks the world of you. So that means a lot to me. We don't remember the days, we remember the moments. And one of the worst moments of my life was getting divorced and a judge yelling at us after we went through a GAL, saying that shared physical custody does not work 20 years ago. And I was just becoming a police chief, but to have somebody, because he's wearing a robe, yelling at me saying you know, I'm not gonna get to see my three daughters, mom, because I'm a guy, was, I'll never forget it. And I want to make sure that we don't put judges on the bench that think like that anymore.
Yeah, I certainly don't think like that. I think we've come a long way in the probate and family court since then. I think if anything, it's not a law, but the default is starting from 50-50 custody now, unless, there really is a reason why it wouldn't work. If there's someone with a substance abuse disorder, if there's someone, domestic violence, but I certainly am a big proponent of shared parenting plans whenever possible.
It's great. I ended up buying a house 2 houses away and saw my kids every day. So it worked out okay, but it was horrible, and I'm glad to hear your thoughts on that. Are there any innovative ways in your dealings with when all the kids are off to college, and usually it's the dad still paying, sometimes the mom's paying, whatever, but to make sure that the money gets to the children, and when the kid's living at school 40 weeks a year and the payer is sitting at home, the payee is sitting at home, getting the child support, is there any innovative ways to make sure that more of the money goes to the children?
Yeah, you could, if, often in my cases, I do this. I'm not sure as a judge if I would have the authority to post it, but we often resolve cases by saying we're gonna set up an account that both parents fund, whether it's 50-50 or 75-25%, and then that the child can have a debit or credit card to use that money. So it basically is going directly to the child without, handing $1,000 a month to a child. So I've done that in a lot of cases. I think as a judge, if you're concerned about the money not getting to the child, you could have the child support be paid as directly as possible to, to certain expenses rather than to the other parent. So, go to a child's credit card if they have it. It could go to the child's rent. It could go to their meal, their board plan at school.
One thing that I've always thought about a lot is how the government, a judge, can tell you to pay child support and to pay for college just because you're divorced. Because if you're not divorced, no one's going to tell you to pay for college. Luckily, I could pay for college, and I did, but I wanted to. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like,
Well, I think
government should be able to order you to pay for college.
I think that has changed a bit over the time too. It used to be people were getting ordered to pay 50-50 of college no matter what it costs. Now the child support guidelines call for a person to not have to pay more than 1/3 of the cost of the tuition at UMass Amherst. So people are still getting ordered to pay, but I think it's a much more reasonable amount. And to me, I think that is fair because, most parents, I won't say all, but most parents want their kids to be able to go to college. And if they're intact marriage, they're willing to pay for that. So if you happen to have, a mom who's really well off, but she just doesn't want to contribute to her child's college, I don't feel like it's fair for that child to not have a parent pay for some of it.
All right, I'm glad to vote for you next week. I think you're gonna make a great judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Also, Devani.
It was such a pleasure meeting you. And to know all about your family. I feel like I know them, Well, first of all, I'm very concerned about this court, and you bring your experience and your qualifications to it, and that's very important. The reason that I'm here, that I'm elected, fortunately, I had friend with him a very difficult relationship. And the man that she was in the relationship became really abusive. And she really feared for her life. She had a 209 restraining order. She went to court 7 times. And the 8th time, she went. And we had a police officer go with her to support her, a friend of ours. Asked the judge to give him a $200,000 bail. Give her $150,000. And the judge said $200. So my friend paid it in fear. A week later, she was dead. So I'm gonna admit my ignorance. I had no idea that was not so. I didn't know how judges got their jobs. I found out. And I was into the duties of being a men's one, I can do that. I only don't need to. I don't have that great authority in appointing or whatever. Some judges have let me down, not to that extent, but, you know. So it is very important to me. And what's important to me is when a child is removed, have you been involved in that?
Yes, and I think we discussed that a bit. I've been involved in several removal cases, usually arguing to prevent the removal. And my colleague Bob Rivers and I had a 12-day trial on that where we were successful in having the child stay in Massachusetts and not get removed to New York.
I have a couple of, from your, JNC, that I want to ask about cases, but they haven't been resolved when you wrote this, and I want to know the rest of the story, what the result was. But, I'm going to tell you, early in my tenure here, we had someone that was put in the court. And I want to know how you would roll. She had a case where the father was a loving father. They were divorced. He lived very close to her and their children. They were childless. And he'd see them almost every day. And even Christmas Eve, he would go to the house and stay overnight so that he could see them in the morning. And she went to court to be allowed to go to, I think it was Oregon, across the country with her children. She did not have a job there. She didn't know a person there. She didn't have a relative there. She didn't have a friend. What would you rule?
So I think it'd be very unlikely that I would rule for removal in that case based on those facts. And I would apply the law. If they had a shared parenting plan, I'd be looking at just what is in the best interest of this child. And if the child has a good relationship with both parents and both parents have been very involved and there's no real legitimate reason mom is seeking to move, then I would most likely deny that request.
Well, we talked about this, I'm 100% enjoying custody. I have met with the Fathers Coalition, and we have Patrick that's been coming for decades, and it has changed, but not that far. But fathers really got the dirty end of the stick the years. But what I was going to say is that this man was divorced from his children. There was no way that he was going to have any communication with them. And you know what she gave? And they don't use that word anymore. I hate it. Visitation. He had visitation rights. 1 hour on the computer. He could have his children. So, you know, that, and you know where I saw it? In the Boston Globe. And I thought, oh my gosh, what action did you have? How did we miss that? And so I won't vote for anyone who doesn't have compassion. And every child deserves to have a mother and father in their lives. And that will always be in my mind. That poor man, that he was, his children were just taken away with no good reason. So that's what I like about you. You do have compassion and you understand the children and the father in their life. Now let's go back to one of your cases, and that was Leon Bellin and Dara, what was it?
Dana
Not easy, easy names. So it still was out there when you filed this. Tell me what happened, and I'm not going to say about it.
Sure. So that's a case where I actually represented my client Dana, the wife, in her divorce case several years ago. And then more recently, it was a modification case where the father in that case lives in Tennessee. My client lives in Boston, and father was seeking to really expand the parenting schedule. He wanted to have their twin children with him for 8 weeks of the summer at a time, with no time for my client. And we went to trial. Unfortunately, that was one of the few cases I have not been able to resolve. We had a GAL who was favorable to my client, but we went to trial last summer, and the judge entered a judgment definitely expanding father's parenting time, but not giving him the 8 consecutive weeks that he was looking for.
Right. Also, you had a case and it was supposed to be resolved February 2024. And so it's not in here. I'd love to hear the result of that. And that was That was before Judge Barber, and that was the case of, I'm trying to see the names.
Handlers.
Right.
Yeah, so that one's still sort of hanging out there. It may or may not be resolved. It was a divorce case, very difficult case. The parties were both elderly and they started and stopped several times. Mental health.
Attorneys.
Yeah, husband had about 7 different attorneys. I was wife's one attorney. Husband had a lot of mental health issues. There was a guardian appointed for him at one point, and then it was removed. We finally got the case settled, which was great, but there's been a lot of post settlement litigation. My colleague Lindsay is smiling because she's taking that one over for me if I'm lucky enough to be appointed. But I think we're mostly done. And we were able to settle it, but that was a really tough one. And we had it settled before a wonderful former Judge Kaplan had the case settled. We all agreed and shook on it, and then husband changed his mind and wouldn't sign it, and then it went on for another year.
And sometimes these agreements don't do too well, that the children have to see a father who is an alcoholic or whatever. Do you look into those cases to see how they are good children are doing in these
I
situations?
try to keep in touch with most of my former clients. You know, I can't say I do with all of them, but I'd say
Well, I like your pro bono. And is there any case that stands out to you that that you'd like to tell us about, that it was most rewarding that you had in your career?
Sure, I think that would be one of my pro bono cases where I represented a woman whose husband attempted to murder her, so through the Family Law Project. And she had been representing herself against her husband, who was in a union, so he had union counsel paid for him. So she was having a really hard time. She had terrible PTSD. It was really difficult to be in the same courtroom with him. There was a restraining order in place, and she basically couldn't even really speak to the judge. She was so traumatized. So I came in and, you know, I think immediately the dynamics in the case shifted. And we were eventually able to settle that case, but there was a lot of post complaints filed after the divorce was filed for modification and for contempt. The dad was able to have supervised visitation with the children, but he continued to have drug issues and being arrested. And so there was a lot of back and forth on that, but I just felt like I made such a difference in her life, you know, in a way that I love being able to work for my paying clients, but doing that for someone who wouldn't have been able to have an attorney if I weren't a volunteer, really just was helping someone who so needed the help.
Well, I have been following that Harmony case, and I've cried, because how outrageous that this judge, knowing that this father before him shot someone in the head, he was a violent person, everyone said that, and he even said before the judge that he had abused this special needs child who was blind in one eye. And he even said, he even made her wash the toilet with her personal himself. Okay, full custody. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but I would have had her go to a loving foster home, and with some hope she would be adopted. She never had a good day in her life, and we'll never know. He dismembered her. They were living in a car, and she was having accidents, so we beat her to death. So I called Judge Budd, because I found out he had retired, and he was on the recall. And I said, I want him on. I don't think he was. He's up now. But that's where we should have stopped, right there. He should have been responsible, and no one's doing anything. No one said anything. He was rewarded to be on a recall. So I'm not happy with the court system. We have racial discrimination, and we have discrimination here. This little child never got the justice that she deserved, and we'll never know. And so the balls, it stopped here, because they had moved to New Hampshire. And Governor Sununu, I don't even know him, but he said that's where it should have stopped. She could have had a life, and yet that judge goes on. So I'm just venting, but I'm just saying that meeting with you those hours and knowing you would have never, ever given custody. Would you give custody to someone like that? Can you believe?
I don't want to criticize another judge where I don't know the case, but it doesn't sound like that was a decision I would have made.
Well, I don't think without hesitation, you could worry about his reputation. So anyway, but, this is what I see. And so, I don't have much clout, I don't have authority, and people think we do. And as governance councils, guess what? My whole job is to vote yes or no. I don't know who applied for your position. I don't know how many got interviewed. I don't know how many got rejected. But people think, we have all these resumes, we choose someone. We don't. And I'm just pleased that this governor is putting people up that are qualified, not political people. Not, and that's what I've been waiting 8 years for this. And I'm really pleased that you applied. And I want you to know, I got a call from Judge Amy Blake. She said a lot of good things about you, so I want you to know that. So, and, one of my best votes, Amy. So I just want to thank you for all the time that you afforded me. And I know that your family must be very proud. And I wish you all good luck. I don't have a poker face. I'm really happy to be supporting you. And I thank the governor, and keep them coming, the non-political people that are qualified. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Very much, Counselor.
So done.
Thank you. Great to see you. I think the most important thing I wanted to say is thank you for your application, because you are giving up a very lucrative job to serve the Commonwealth. And I think it's important for folks to know that one of the challenges we often have getting people like you to apply for the bench is it really doesn't pay very much. And the attorneys who are really great are often making so much money, the Commonwealth can't compete. And so it is a sacrifice on behalf of you and your family to do that, and I deeply appreciate it. So I just wanted that noted. Your resume is outstanding, your recommendations, all of that is terrific. The one thing that an attorney was talking to me about yesterday that I think you have, but if you have any comments or thoughts on it, and this isn't a trick, I'm not trying to put you in a weird situation or anything, but they are concerned that in this particular court, there are some judges who don't seem to have the right temperament. And that's a very broad brush, right, for me to throw at you. But have you ever, in no names, but have you ever experienced something like that? And is there anything that you may have taken away from it? It's you, if you sat at the bench?
Yes, I definitely have experienced that. I think there are, some judges who I feel yell way too much. I don't think I will ever yell at a judge. As a judge, I like to think I won't. I have a very sort of calm demeanor. It takes a lot to get me riled up. I'm not someone who gets angry easily. So I think I'll be well suited in that way. I've also had judges who can be just really rude to both self-represented litigants and to lawyers, sort of needlessly rude, making mean comments. And I don't want to be one of those judges either. I want people, it's going to be a tough enough experience for them to be coming to Probate and Family Court. As a judge, I don't want to make it any worse by yelling or by being demeaning or just not being respectful. So I actually think my demeanor is probably one of the things that will make me a good judge, just because I tend to treat everyone with respect, no matter who they are. I don't get off on making people feel, small or making people be condescending.
And it's a very, very stressful job. I mean, all of our courts are stressful, but this is a particularly stressful one, I think. Okay, that's really, I could sit here and ask you questions that we all know the answers to already. And I'm not going to take your time. Thank you again for applying. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else, sir?
We spent a lot of time in my office talking, and you've answered every question I've had, and I've certainly expressed the concerns I have involving the probate court, which Chief Justice brought out outside. The fact that trials are broken up on a regular basis and how frustrating that is for litigants. I'm told that they're starting a trial session just on an experimental basis to keep that from happening, and I hope it's successful. I do expect it, since I've been the one beating that drum, to be named the Kennedy session. We have, I don't have any questions for you, but we have a few minutes before the ambassador comes on. I think she said she was coming on at 11. So we can take a 5-minute recess and we'll reconvene and hear from the ambassador.
Thank you.
Stay here in case.
Hey,
Stay here in case.
So they can hear you.
ambassador, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Welcome back to the State House. We miss you here.
Oh, I
You
miss
are
the
the
State
last-
House every day.
You are the last witness and we've been anxiously awaiting your arrival. So what would you like to say about the nominee? We assume that you're favorable,
Okay.
right? Because we had gone to the unfavorable side, so I'm not sure.
I can't imagine there is an unfavorable side. So thank you, Counselor. Is that Counselor Kennedy? I can't see you,
It
so
is,
I'm
Ambassador.
trying to go by voice.
It is ambassador.
Excuse me?
It is
Okay,
Terry
Counselor
Kennedy, yes.
Kennedy.
Yes, it is.
Counselors, thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify today on behalf of Jess Dubin's candidacy to be a probate judge in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I am testifying on her behalf today in my personal capacity and certainly not as the United States Ambassador to Ireland. Many of the counselors there do know me from my time, but for those who I have not had the privilege of meeting, congratulations on all of your elections. I previously served as a member of the House of Representatives from 2012 until 2022. I represented the town of Easton and the city of Brockton, my hometown. As a beginning of my time in the legislature, I served on the Judiciary Committee, where I went on to serve as vice chair, and eventually I chaired the committee on the judiciary before subsequently becoming the majority leader of the House. I first met Jess in my capacity as the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee when she came in as a representative of the Boston Bar Association. As you well know, that many of the bar associations weigh in on very many pieces of legislation that we have before us in the committee. And they provide us the skill and expertise on the issues that they have expertise in that is beyond our general knowledge of the law. So Jess first came in, and I remember we met countless times, and she was trying to educate me as well as the committee on issues surrounding custody issues in Massachusetts. At that time, there was a bill that was seeking to change the presumption with regard to custody to a 50-50 split. And it was a very contentious bill. Groups of mostly fathers who felt that they didn't have the benefit of doubt in our courtroom, and just came in to lobby on behalf of the bill, and was able to provide not only me, but the other members of our committee and staff with the information that we needed to have before we undertook any advancement of the bill within our committee. It did eventually advance out of committee, but never made it to the floor of the House. I can say in all my times as judiciary chair, I had literally hundreds of meetings, and I can't think of anyone that came in to meet with me that had as a greater knowledge of the law or expertise, and I could always rely very much on her advice and counsel. She had a great, deep understanding and knowledge of the law, which I think is, you will all agree, is very important for our judges to have, particularly when you are dealing with the very sensitive issues that exist within the cases that fall before a probate court judge. Her knowledge of the law, outstanding. I would say our relationship, which began initially when Jess came in as an advocate for a piece of legislation, a representative of the Boston Bar, evolved to a relationship that I believe was based on great mutual respect. Come to find out, after meeting Jess and knowing her for a couple of years in that capacity, turns out we lived in the same neighborhood, although not right next to each other in the same neighborhood. And she was, in fact, a member of my community. And so as time went on, I got to know her more on a personal level, just beyond the professional level. I can say, as a person, she has all of the qualities that I believe. I'm a former trial attorney. Before I was a member of the House of Representatives, I was a trial attorney, and I practiced in many courts all over the Commonwealth as both a criminal attorney as well as a civil litigator. And Jess possesses the skills that I believe makes a good judge. Number one, she is kind and respectful. She is always courteous. She has great empathy. Her lived experiences in our community of Easton, whether it be as a mother in the community, a volunteer in our sports organizations. I know Jess was very active with soccer teams and lacrosse in the town, and also volunteered. Heavy workload in her own practice. She had a vast amount of time that she devoted to volunteering in our schools as well. So she's a great community member, a great person. She absolutely has a command and expertise of the law, but brings with it the personal qualities that I think would provide her with wonderful judicial temperament. And with that, I can certainly answer any questions you might have about Jess, but I recommend her with nothing but the highest regard and with no reservation at all.
Does anybody have any questions? Councilor Devaney?
I have no questions. You said it completely, and I thank you for your testimony. And I do miss you in the State House, and that's my bucket
thank you.
wish. My bucket wish someday to get to Iowa. So, so congratulations
We
again.
just added 20 new flights from Boston on JetBlue, so.
Councilor Ferrara?
My husband's side.
Councilor Ferrara?
Good morning, Ambassadors. Joe Ferrer. We miss you, and I am well filled in by Representative Fiola. So I hear great things are happening in Ireland because of you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joe. Nice to see your face.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Well, Ambassador, obviously you very rarely appear before us. So the fact that you're even here means a lot. You know, you're very well respected in this chamber. Your testimony certainly means a lot, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Counselor.
Now
Good
get back
see
to
you
work.
as well.
I'm sure you got a lot
Yes,
to do.
I must.
Thank
I
you,
have
Ambassador.
George Mitchell waiting for me downstairs. Thank you, folks. Bye-bye.
Okay, and on that note, we'll adjourn. Was that terrible?
Thank you all very much.